Today we have a session that's going to be focused on e-discovery and how it's poised to take advantage of AI and machine learning in a way that perhaps other areas of the law aren't. We are honored to have with us one of the experts in the area who's been working on AI for more than a decade, Kat Casey of Reveal Data. She's been on both the buying side, the law firm side, and the selling side of AI, and so she can really bring us a unique perspective. And as we move forward in the series, we have a number of upcoming sessions that you might want to check out. Next one on November 8th is focused on recruiting in the legal industry. Where will we find the talent, or will we use the talent that we already have? And so we have some great experts, Somer Hackley from Distinguished Recruiting, and Larry Bridgesmith from Guardrail Technologies, who's also an adjunct professional, will be joining us to talk about that. We also have a session the following week on real tools that are available today. So things that aren't just kind of in MVP mode, but actually are available for you to use today. And we'll have Kathy Zhu from Streamline AI and Eric Baum from Parrot available to chat there. And they'll really talk to us about their journey into using AI as a solution. Both are attorneys who actually made the transition to founders after seeing the promise that AI could have for legal. And so we're going to talk about real world use cases, and you'll hear Kat talking about some of that today as well. And then finally, before we close down things for the Thanksgiving holiday here in the US, we have a very special holiday edition of AI for Smart People called Gobbling Down on AI Gossip, pre-holiday hangout with Bowie and Burns. And we have gotten the duo of Jerry Bowie from FTI Consulting and Cassie Burns from King and Spalding to join us. Both of them are self-described nerds who love tech, and I have been doing a lot of work in the field of AI. Jerry Bowie, who you may have seen doing deepfakes of himself on LinkedIn, and Cassie is literally everywhere that there's tech and AI going on. So I think that's going to be a really exciting session, and we encourage you to check that out. But definitely share a little bit about your background and kind of your journey to AI.
Yeah, so so my name's Kat Casey. I'm the Chief Growth Officer for Reveal. I've been evangelizing about AI now for about 17 years. I went right out of law school and kind of fell into e-discovery real quickly. And so I've done kind of the entire trifecta from, running a global law firm's e-discovery department with Gibson Dunn to working with consultancies like the Big Four, to being on the software side, to being on the people side. And throughout the entire journey, I've started writing and speaking about how technology can amplify and supercharge legal professionals, bring us up to do the things we went to law school or we got into legal for, that the kind of higher level, using the, 9 quadrillion synapses in our brain, as opposed to, doing repetitive stuff over and over again. So it's been a passion of mine that I've talked and written and TikToked about for almost 2 decades now.
Yeah, and everyone loves it, especially the TikToking. I'm not on there yet because I've not figured. I have an account, but I'm really just prowling right now.
So I have to do it in doses because it's like a vortex. If I go and I go to make one, suddenly I blink and 2 hours have passed and I'm scrolling. I don't know what and why am I still looking at it? And how has the algorithm done that to my brain?
Right. I mean, it's winning for sure. That's a winning algorithm. So one of the things, so you and I keep crossing paths. I think I met you first when you were at Gibson, but one of the things that I've only recently learned about you is how accomplished your family is. What's it like I think your mom just got a certification just not that long ago. Like, what's that like living with such an accomplished family?
Well, my grandfather created virtual memory and he has 1 or 2 of his computers in the Smithsonian. So like the bar of accomplishment was here. I'm slacking, man. I'm the loser in the family. No, it's been wonderful. Like having folks that are tech forward. My mom's been embracing coding. My dad has worked in computers and science forever. My uncle was writing programs to beat chess masters when he was 10. So technology was always in my lexicon. And so for me, even though I studied existential philosophy, so dead, German, and angry, I knew how to talk to. And because I knew how to talk tech and it had been something I grew up with, it made it easier for me to start writing and speaking about it and kind of explaining complex technical ideas to folks who maybe went to law school because they didn't want to study lambda calculus and didn't want to deal with relational databases. And for the love of God, I don't want statistics, right? And so it's been, I think, a really good proving ground to kind of learn how to talk tech and to bridge the gap between my, the artistic side of the family and then the folks that code for fun and build systems when they're bored out of spare parts. So
I love it. That's crazy. All right. Always something interesting to learn about anybody you know. That's what I'm more excited about. So let's start by looking back at eDiscovery, though. So whether everyone acknowledges it or not, like many of our favorite tools have had some of this AI and machine learning built into it for many, many years. So, at least predictive coding into the, mid 2010s, 20s, whatever. Reveal picked up brain space in 2021. So this didn't just happen with co-counselor case text, last year. This has been in eDiscovery and is very solidly in eDiscovery. And so, how has eDiscovery changed? You've kind of seen the whole arc. We've gone through the arc together, but you've been deeply ingrained with it. How have you seen it change through your career?
So, you're calling back to like DeSilva Moore, 09 and 10. I remember Andy Judge Peck sharing with me the opinion before it was go live. So I thought that, with the amount of data that we had back then, suddenly we'd all be using AI. And the shift that I've seen in the last, I'd say 12, 15 years is we're not looking at just email. We're looking at 20 different data sources and globally and across dozens and dozens of custodians. And even the email component is bigger and messier and more complex. And so it's harder and harder for just a group of humans to connect the dots in data. And so what I've seen is gradually different types of machine learning getting adopted in. And people may not think of it as AI, but email threading, that's a type of AI. Sentiment analysis, what's the feeling going on in text? That's a type of machine learning and AI. Concept clustering, all of those are little pieces of AI that have kind of become normalized. And I'd say the last 18 months, this whole generative AI renaissance has made people think like, oh no, we're starting to do AI. And I'm like, please, it's been going on for a decade, and little bits and pieces that maybe people don't think of as AI, they're making it so that you can connect the dots in these disparate data sets, like with BrainSpace or, whatever other analytic tool, but it lets you connect the dots faster. What we're seeing now, though, is AI that instead of connecting the dots can make net new things. And so that is it's a different calculus. It's a different type of risk, a different type of opportunity. But we have a decade and a half of case law, of proven cases, of validated examples of workflow, of expertise that we can build off of as we continue to move forward to more robust AI. That would kind of be the way that I look at it.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I love that you mentioned Judge Peck, because as I think about where we're at today, right? And I remember when TAR 1.0 was proposed and like the people losing their marbles over it, right? Like, no, this could never be, why, how could we rely on computers, right? So did Judge Peck carry us on his back, or what learnings can we learn from TAR, the evolution of TAR, and how that might apply to AI and where we go next?
Well, I think Andy kicked the door down for sure with the bench. I think there was something, not Andy, but we got wrong with AI at first. We made it complicated. We made it the AI workflow. But a company patented the term predictive coding. And then we decided to have CAL and CAR and TAR and every acronym under the sun. It got confusing. It felt like you needed a linguist or a statistician or the ability to have, see the future in 18 different languages, right? We made AI a thing, a different thing, its own workflow that you needed different experts for that seemed daunting. And what we can learn from looking at consumer grade AI, Google, probably the most powerful AI on the planet. It's a free-form text box that I write 15 typos in and it kind of guesses what I want to do. ChatGPT, same thing, same typos. If I want to, how do I make crab stuffed salmon? I don't have to read 18 people's life story. It cuts through the noise to get to the signal, right? We've learned that the way to drive adoption is you don't make it foreign and uncomfortable and user not so friendly. And so I think we're starting to see that in how the software is being built, how it's being marketed, how it's being presented. It's not for just the wonkiest of wonks among us. It's for the partner who maybe wants to take a quick peek in their data. And I think that lesson of, yes, validate it. Yes, make sure the tech is reliable. Yes, mitigate bias, but don't make it a complicated, different animal. That I think is why we're going to see much, much, much faster adoption of these newer types of AI than any of us would have ever guessed. And let me tell you, the last 18 months, heck, no, scratch that. The last 10 months, since November 2022, November 30th, we're almost at the 1 year mark. That is the most seismic shift I've seen in legal in 20 years. And we thought we were moving fast in the last 20 years. Like, it is just like, it's a hockey stick. It's just, exponential growth of adoption, of awareness, of willingness to talk about AI. And so, I think the consumer friendly, building off of the decades of case law, and then a younger generation of folks that grew up with tech, that's all combining for this like crazy renaissance where suddenly, is it unethical to not use AI? I mean, I never thought I would get to that point, but I'm psyched about it.
I know, right? Yeah, I'm calling it, I totally agree with you. I'm calling it we're entering the golden age of legal tech. I thought it was exciting when we stopped using paper, but this is like the last 10 months has been, right? Like crazy where we've gone. So let's talk Gen AI, because I think that's the thing we're talking about the most. It's maybe the most like risky and scary to people, I think. But it also has some applications to eDiscovery as like the practice. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, so what I go back to is there's Gen AI is kind of two beasts, right? So it's built off large language models. And so I think we're dealing with like 220 billion individual kind of signals that are informing GPT-4 right now. We're at a quadrillion signals in the human brain. So it's not quite as smart as a human brain, but it's getting there, right? So that can do two things. One, you can ask it, what is the answer to X, Y, or Z question? Is this information out here? Kind of what are the patterns? So it's sort of what we've been doing with machine learning. It's really good at it. It cuts through the noise really well. I love the idea. We're building out something where we're layering that free form type in a question into all of the other AI tools that we have. Awesome. Not too scary, right? There's guardrails. It's already in our workflow. That I think we're going to see in knowledge management, contract analytics, and it's already being baked out right now in my company, but also all the other ones are doing it too, right? That's intuitive. The other piece of the pie is those large language models, they try to guess the next word that you want, right? That's how they work. But from that guessing the next word, when you ask a question, it can write, I don't know, my favorite thing is it wrote a Bible verse in the style of the New King James Bible about removing a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from a VCR. Really compelling, but what else can it do? It can do summarize the data set. It can help create motions. It can help create a contract. It can help make work product. And it's kind of veering into UPL, the unauthorized practice of law, right? And so that piece is harder to figure out what the guardrails are. There's a lot of potential reward, but there's a lot of displacement potential for legal professionals, and there's risk, right? So in between, I think we're going to see the adoption of that connect the dots sooner. And then around kind of the generating new stuff, we're seeing it built out, but I think that's going to have a lot more regulation around it, a lot more soft law, a lot more case law around it because of the risk of bias and hallucinations. And look at the Mata case, fictitious citations. To be fair, though, we had the guardrails to regulate that. Like, what did the guy in Mata do? He didn't check his work, right?
The human failed on that one, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think we'll see the connect the dots. We already have workflow. We already have validation. Figuring out how to appropriately validate and have guardrails for the generative stuff. That's the more foreign feeling. It's not going to be any slower to be adopted, but we're going to have to pay closer attention to how it's adopted, what my QC is, what my workflow is, and whether or not I'm disclosing it and getting affirmative consent and giving notice for using it.
Gosh, that's a long list. What about as discoverable data, generative AI?
100%. I mean, think of, I like to go back to not the most chipper case, but the Casey Anthony case, right? So what happened was she was Googling, how do I kill a child or something along those lines. It ended up ultimately being excluded, but that question, well, that's a prompt, right? So if I look at that, what she wrote in was discoverable. The results that she got was discoverable. The links that she clicked was discoverable, and you could tie it to her behavior. All right, put on my magic hat to chat GPT. I type in a prompt for the same question. The prompt is discoverable. The data inputs are discoverable. The output is discoverable. What I did is discoverable. So that's one piece, right? Then you can kind of look at IP, right? So Samsung had an issue where their coders were copying in chunks of proprietary code that was then being used to train the code generation in ChatGPT. And it created a question mark of who owns that IP. So if I'm discovering, I would want to know what was put in, what the guardrails were, what was used to train, who then had it brought out to them. And that will raise some legal questions on, is there protection if you threw out this confidential information into the universe? I don't know. If you post it on a website, probably would vitiate some of that confidentiality, right? So there's some questions that'll arise there. And what I've been telling folks is not every case is going to have GAI data.
Right.
But the cases where it's very relevant, you will be potentially in sanction area if you aren't protecting, preserving, collecting, and reviewing that data. If that is the only place that that piece of information could have been found, right? And there's definitely cases where it could be super material. And so we've got to kind of put on our, custodial interview hats or ESI protocol hats, are frankly just our legal hats, and say, hey, is there going to be information I need in this data source? Same thing I ask for every other data source. And if so, I damn well better have a process to hold, preserve, protect, prevent spoliation, inadvertent or otherwise, because ignorance is never a good affirmative defense.
Yeah, no joke. So I didn't prep this question in advance, but if you put data into let's talk about the Casey Anthony case. So if you type that into ChatGPT, so consumer grade product, do they produce, is it the same production kind of process that you would use? You're calling OpenAI and sending them an RFP? Or how are you getting kind of the background data? Or do we know yet? Have we really done it much?
Honestly, I think we're still figuring it out. I think you probably would have to, it would be contingent on a couple of things. What settings you have, because you can have it erase the history, but I'm pretty sure it only erases it to your eye, not to the back end, right? Mm-hmm. So the settings someone has, whether it's the paid or the free, right? Whether it's plugged into the internet or not, I don't know. I would imagine you would put in a request for the information or a subpoena, or just a regular, ESI request, but I'm not certain what the mechanisms for pulling it out will be yet.
What it will look like, what the mechanisms will be like. That sounds like a whole new company, probably.
And here's what I've been telling people. So I have been Pavloved, right? The dog that would salivate when the bell was ringing. So I've been Pavloved by Google. Question Google for 25 years, right? Really? In the 3 or 4 months since ChatGPT is available on my phone, 25 years of conditioning gone. My first instinct, and I moved the icon so it was on the front home screen in front of Google, is I ChatGPT first as a cut through all the noise and sort of figure out what I'm thinking, right? Or, who is this person? All the Google stuff, who is this actor? How do I get to where? What would I want to do if I'm in Wyoming? Random stuff, right? But I'm going there first. And so I actually think, as much as a lot of the newer types of media and stuff, people are like, oh, it's going to change everything, and it really doesn't. I think for this tool, it actually will, because it's changing behavior so broadly, and people are relying on it far more quickly than they relied on anything web-based. And the adoption rate, 100 million users in a matter of days, that is ridiculous. And even if, if we look at the Gartner hype curve, right, you go up and then you go into the trough of disillusionment, I don't know that we're even going to have a trough of disillusionment, because it's been so widely integrated into mainstream things. Microsoft, LexisNexis. You can do search generative experience, which is the Google one, right? And they pushed a pop out to me to have me opt into it. I didn't even have to ask to opt into it, right? So that's how many hundreds of millions of users. We've got 1.9, more than that, 1.9 billion iPhone users, probably 4 to 5 billion smartphone users. It's already, the tendrils are out there. And so I think it's going to fundamentally change discovery, fundamentally change information retrieval, and keep us all gainfully employed forever.
Right. Well, that's one of the things we talked about on the last show with Shauna Hoffman was, yes, some jobs are going to be eliminated, right? That's for sure going to happen. But there are places for those people to go if they're so inclined. There is money to be made from all of this. It's bonkers.
Well, I don't even know that eliminated is the right word. I think it's changed. Like,
Right.
Plato and Socrates thought people would get stupider and lose their jobs once the written word started. And then when the Guggenheim Press came, same thing. When the computer happened, same thing, right? I think what we're going to see is people getting a strategic advantage from using tech. They're faster, smarter, but able to do more, getting more business. And if you're savvy and start learning about these tools and tech, your job's not going to go anywhere, but how you do your job will, right? It's like with the advent of, web-based legal research, right? The job didn't end because there was a computer involved, but you weren't going to the law library. Heck, most firms don't have a law library anymore, but you were going to the internet. So there was a new skill you had to learn. And, the robots weren't replacing you, but Bob and Sue and, Cheryl and Kat who are using tech are just leapfrogging you. And so if you want to be competitive, you've got to start learning those skills. So it's not replaced, but I said at the ACC last week, it's not an existential crisis. It's not live or die, job or no job. It's an evolutionary crisis. And if you don't evolve, then you will lose that strategic advantage. And maybe your career will kind of flatten out. Maybe you won't get that promotion. Maybe you won't get that new sexy job. Not great. So that's what you want to learn now. And frankly, there's going to be a whole cadre of, prompt engineers are getting $500,000 to $900,000 at some of these tech companies, or learning to code, all of that. So all of us who are tech fluent and savvy have a real opportunity to really, really level up and become even more critical in our organizations, no matter your role, whether you're a paralegal, a legal technologist, a lawyer, or working at a services company, there's an opportunity to just reach for the gold ring like never before.
I think that's exactly right. When else do you have a chance to be like at the beginning? I mean, I know we've saying AI has happened for a long time, but like this is really the beginning of legal adopting it in a widespread way. You're at day one. Let's do this, right? Like, let's go.
And it's putting legal at the table much sooner, because
And you
we
should
learned our lesson from the internet, though. Like, not planning ahead means you're going to have massive business risk. So I was at a GC summit in San Fran, and like all of these folks were like, yeah, now the business is asking me, what's the risk? What's the benefit? How can we leverage this? But legal isn't always the first person that's asked. And so for in-house and for law firms alike, there's an opportunity to kind of really have a true seat at the table, which isn't always the case in every organization, which is exciting and terrifying to see, because not all of us know as much as you or I about all the tech going on right now. So
I love it. So we have a really interesting question. I'm interested to know if you know the answer, because I have no idea. So what about the training piece of generative AI? If I'm researching similar things over and over for one matter, is the model going to learn from that and then skew my results when I ask about a different case?
So not necessarily. It depends on how the tool is made. So with ChatGPT, for example, not every query you type in is training the model. There's different like snippets of time, right? Now, if there was perhaps a wealth of misinformation on the internet where they were scraping, that could skew results. But the query over and over again, not necessarily. Now, there's different ways to build in GAI into, say, Discovery, right? So you can almost have it air gapped, where it's just, you've trained it up to a point, and then you apply it to a discrete data set, and it's going to kind of learn just from those inputs. And then you can decide, how much of that model you want to take to other cases, right? So you can only take the root model and move it over, and it's not going to skew. Or you could say, hey, I've been doing FCP investigations for this global mining company for 18 months. I've learned so much. I want to carry over the whole model, right? So that wouldn't be skewing, but it would be refining the results based off of, the input that you had and the key terms of art, right? And so that would be a portable model, right? Now, if it's just a kind of a Wild West, it's a large language model applied, and you're not training, it's learning and responding based on the data set, but it's not training an additional model, then you don't have to worry about it. But you need to ask those questions, like, how is the model being trained? Is it based off of this case set? Can I carry those insights over? My gut is that nothing is going to skew without you explicitly wanting to carry those insights over to other cases, if that answers the question. But everyone's building it differently. So that's the way we're thinking and building it out, but that could evolve based on how someone else thinks about building it out.
Right. But it's the right question to ask, right? That's a good question to be asking. And asking how the model is trained anytime you're thinking about this is a good foundational question to start with. That just is.
And which models being used. My massive cautionary advice for people is read the terms and conditions. Okay. So I read the T's and C's for OpenAI, and the types of data they collect is all the data. Now there's certain settings or types of relationships you can have with OpenAI where it's not collecting all that data, but you need to know that. Same thing with search generative experience with Google. The pop-up they showed me is they're collecting not just what I would have collected from regular Google, but like geolocation and different like biometric. It's a lot more than you would expect. So you want to know what model they're using. I believe AWS and Azure have ones that have more guardrails for if you're using proprietary confidential information.
Yeah.
But you need to know that. And the great thing is, as the legal minds, we can ask that question, like, how is confidentiality protected? Is this limited to my data set? When I'm thinking priv, when I'm thinking discoverability, all of that kind of weaves in.
Yeah, I love that. So what about how can we use generative AI and Tetris it together with existing tools to kind of superpower, force multiplier, however you want to put it? Something that keeps coming up, stacking wins, basically.
Well, I mean, I like to say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is the weirdest metaphor ever. But, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't forget a child in there unless it's real dirty water. But we have great AI and I'm thinking in my hat of discovery, because that's what my bread and butter. But we already have like generative AI can do some things, like it can figure concepts out, it can figure sentiment out, it can figure who's talking to who out. But we already have really great battle tested tech. So why would we reinvent that? Why not layer it in? Like the way I'm looking at it is you layer in the generative AI to ask broad questions like, who's talking about this concept, right? And then it'll give you some documents, and then you can push that into the visualization of sentiment analysis or push that into communication mapping. The ickiness people have had around Meta and around some of the other cases, I think there's 6 cases now, is generative AI right now, if you're using ChatGPT, it doesn't show its work. It's like answering, x plus 5 minus 17 to the nth power and just writing 14, right?
The number, yeah.
Right. And so the problem with that is there's no way to validate. And so the way that we look at it is, free form text, you can ask your question, you can start ideating, right? And then it's going to show you the actual documents. You can dig in and be like, oh, okay, that I understand where that came from. Or you can go into those other modules, those other visualizations, and layer them in. Say, okay, you said Bob and Sue are talking about these concepts. Okay, I'm going to put that into the cluster wheel and show everything they're talking about. And I can dig further in, or I can go into the communication map. You said Bob and Sue are talking. I'm going to look at what Bob and Sue are talking about, right? So layering it in it's a starting point, because I really think it's good for investigation. What the heck's going on, big picture? But then we've got tools to get real granular. And like if you have a workflow where it's, you start at the broad ideation, or maybe you're the partner who just wants to poke around and doesn't want to actually code documents, right? Ask some questions, go into the visuals, and then push the actual documents. None of this should be copy, paste, and go ever, whether you're doing legal research, knowledge management, contract analytics, or discovery. So I sort of see it as, the trust but verify. I trust that the model's real smart, but I'm going to verify it with these other mechanisms. And ideally, it's going to go from the universe of data, whittle down. And I mean, it's the same approach I've had even before generative AI. I had a big case with I think a $2 or $3 billion proposed fine from the FTC or SEC, I don't remember which, for a big bank, right? And they had hired people from another bank who had just been on the Wall Street Journal's front page for the cartel club, right? They were spoofing granny's panties, all that jazz. My firm, who will not be named, hired part of that team. And so I had to look and see, oh shit, are we in trouble, right? So the universe was several hundred traders, 24/7 talking, billions of trades, so much data. It was going to be tens of millions of dollars just to get the whatever going. So I did sentiment analysis. Were my guys talking to the bad guys? Yep. Shit. Okay. Then concept clustering. Okay. So it's not 200 plus traders. It's 5, whittle, right? Were they talking about bad things like spoofing granny's panties? Sentiment analysis, concept clustering. Is there pressure? Yes and yes. Okay. But it's only 5 times across a 2-week period. Okay. But I've got 24/7 audio. Okay, well, let me just look at the 50 minutes before and after for those few windows of time. So instead of 5 guys times, 14 days times 24 hours, it ended up being about 90 minutes, give or take. And I was able to identify 3 or 4 times that were real ick looking. So then I did structured data analytics on those 3 or 4 windows of time. Right, they said they're spoofing Grammy. They're the bad guys. They're exerting pressure. Oh God, please don't make me have to pay $1 billion fine. And then I saw they were bullshitting, right? The trades, which I had whittled down to instead of probably hundreds of thousands, right? To about 5. They didn't do what they said they were doing, right? And so then, because I had whittled, this happened in a couple of days instead of months. Instead of 10,000 hours, it was just a few dozen. I could go to the regulator and say, hey, I know you were thinking about this. There's the whistleblower action. Here's my report. Here's what we did. Here's why that bad behavior didn't happen. And guess what? You never heard about a second bank on the front page of the Wall Street Journal getting $1 billion fine, right? So that's an example. And if I was to layer GAI in, I would just start with that question. Did so-and-so, right, talk to so-and-so? Yes. Okay. Did any of them discuss this, right? And it would have helped point me in the direction even sooner. So it's just would be accelerating that. But that's already a workflow we're used to. So you can just add that little supercharge in.
Yeah, right. So you're kind of sticking with something that you love. Well, love might be a loose term, but
I love it.
But you're sticking with something you know and love that people are comfortable with, they trust as well. And just kind of layering on some new things, right? That aren't, and if you layer them on at the top of the funnel, they're perhaps not as high risk, right? Because it's going to give you more than you want, more than likely.
It's a pointer. It points you somewhere. And it's
Right.
not, none of this. So Cassie had a great saying. She was speaking, Cassie Burns, at a week or so ago at the Masters Conference, said, hey, we always talk about human in the loop, right? So AI is doing all this great stuff, human in the loop. She said, hey, it should be AI in the loop. The human is the one driving it all. And that's the way I look at this. I think always shout out to Cassie for saying it, but I'm totally stealing it all the time because that's what it should be. We should be in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and Shauna last week said the same thing. She was like, tech to tech does not work. It has to be tech to human, and human has to be the boss. Like, that's how it has to be. So I love that we're all coming to the same conclusions, at least. We're not trying to have the computers run us all. Because I saw that Sam Altman said, AI might kill the world yesterday, but we should still go forward anyway.
Well, I mean, nefarious actor is going to say nefarious things. I joke, like, people are like, oh my God, it's like Skynet. We're going to have like robo lawyers coming down. I'm going to hold a sign. I'm going to threadbare suit saying we'll litigate for food. I'm like, no, it's Iron Man, right? What happens with Iron Man's suit when Tony's not using it? It's gathering dust, right? Tony's a regular human, but Tony's in the driver's seat. He gets better input. He gets better output. But at the end of the day, he's the one running it all. But I wouldn't want to be just Tony battling the Hulk. I want to be in my Iron Man suit battling the Hulk, which is data. So that's my little universal metaphor. But like, be Iron Man. It's not going to be the Terminator. We're going to be fine.
I like it. Plus, you're crossing movie houses, so that they always like when you do that.
Right. I mean, that just means I can never write a book with that title because I would have Disney and whoever actually owns the Terminator, Warner.
Point, yeah.
You have both of them suing me.
Yeah. Well, so one of the areas that I've always thought was ripe for AI is early case assessment, and I was reading through some press releases on the Reveal website, and I saw there's some companies that are starting to do that. I'd love to kind of hear how companies are getting a better understanding for kind of what their risk is in that area with AI.
Well, I mean, I think with AI, you can use it for just identifying kind of the universe of data, or identifying not the smoking gun, but indices of bad behavior sooner, right? So applying models, if you've got a whistleblower for an EEOC case, you can apply it and sort of see if there's that behavior pattern with a certain group of custodians early on. And that can inform like your posture, your settlement posture, how you're going to proceed with the regulator. So applying this AI as opposed to, like, I think initially it was like collect, keyword slice and dice, throw it in review, maybe apply some AI kind of down the road. You just move it earlier in the process, because if you're able to identify certain types of behavior, that can kind of help with your fact-driven case development. Like, is it the smoking gun? Not necessarily, but hey, if it's looking like the I guess what is being claimed might be more likely than not, then that will change and kind of pivot your posture in negotiation. You can also sort of identify potentially kind of risky areas and sort of try to maneuver your meet and confer in the scope of discovery to exclude that potentially. Or if there's one key area that's at issue and there's another area that could not be something that you want brought to light, like it might be a way to kind of pivot how you are structuring the analysis. And frankly, if you can identify where the most likely highly relevant information is, you can probably carve off quite a bit of maybe not so relevant sources of information. So go from like triage, we're not cutting limbs off, to laparoscopic surgery, mitigating cost, but also getting that information more quickly so you can be more strategic in your negotiation and frankly in your case strategy. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just think it's moving the information so much more forward that you just can make better decisions more quickly, as opposed to just say, hey, just take my millions of documents and figure it out and let me know, right?
I think for a little while we lost sight of why we're doing discovery. It's not to look at, touch, categorize, and bucket every document. It really is we should be treating every discovery effort as an investigation. We need to find out those key facts, that key risk, the key liability, and then build your case around that. It doesn't necessarily mean an eyeball or a finger clicking every document. And so with these AI tools, you can kind of take a more nonlinear approach, but also a more precise and accurate approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. And so what do you think there'll ever be a point where AI will autonomously handle most of an EA discovery process with little human oversight?
I don't think so. I mean, I was writing a chapter for a book on GAI, and a quadrillion synapses. So that's 1,000 trillion versus 220 billion, points that a large language model is learning, is using. There's just stuff that the human mind can do better. We're not good at organizing data. We're not good at, going from Slack to Teams to email to whatever to identify patterns. We're really good at interpreting. We're really good at synthesizing that information and understanding maybe the nuances of what a judge is going to think. So there's always going to have to be a human that's doing those higher level skills. Like we realize that John McCarthy's idea, the grandfather of AI, of replacing human cognition with a machine, wasn't quite right. It's better to do augmented intelligence. So tools that are human-centric, designed to fix human problems, human usable, right? They've got a good UX to help us understand what's going on in the data and then synthesize, interpret, and do that higher level function analysis. And so because of that, I think especially in legal, the human's going to become more important, not less, but it's going to be a human that can leverage the technology and has deep subject matter expertise. It's not going to be the 500. I mean, when I started, I had 500 attorneys working on the Intel AMD case, right? And really, you needed to have a pulse and to have an active bar license, and that was about it. That is fundamentally shifting. So it's not going to be as many humans. It's going to be a tiger team that really understands the case material, that can then leverage technology to make those human decisions. And I think the human decisions are going to become increasingly important.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I remember when I was at Kirkland having whole floors of review attorneys where it's just like you said, hundreds of people. I'm not sure what they did with their regular lives. They were just reviewing documents day and I'm like, you have a sad life. I'm sorry for you.
Well, I have so many stories from back then. So yes, and yes. It was a very weird time.
That's why I love Gates Dogfish on LinkedIn so
Yes.
much. I'm like, there was one last night where I'm like, oh, right there, you got me, buddy.
Every time I'm like, that is my soul. Have you stolen my mind? And why didn't I not think of making an anonymous LinkedIn account so I could make funnies and not get yelled at for it?
I know. I was thinking last night, I think one of my life goals is to meet whoever Gates Dogfish is. And I hope that it's someone like completely unexpected, like a silent, quiet nerd or someone.
It's someone I know.
It's gotta be, right? Like
they've said I know them, but they won't tell me who they are. But to be fair, that limits them to 25,953 people. So,
right. So we'll figure it out one day. But I'm putting it on my bucket list to figure out who it is and meet them. So I hope it's somebody fun. What about IoT? So like when we started using mobile phones, that totally hosed discovery, and we're only now getting good at getting stuff off of phones. What about IoT? How's that going to shift discovery, and especially as it relates to AI?
So smart stuff is everywhere. And what I would recommend for anyone is look towards actually criminal cases. That's where it's being used the most. There's been, a smart thermostat was used to identify like a drug smuggling ring. There was a murder case that was determined, I think, by a Roomba. I wrote an article about that. There have been a lot of Fitbit cases. So the way I look at it is, the IoT is the world of structured data. We mostly operate discovery mainly in unstructured, but the unstructured is the mens rea, the thought, the intent, bad intent. The smart devices and databases, that's where you see if they actually did the bad. Like that goes back to that bank case I was talking about. It looked bad, 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 bad. Then the structured data, which was created by a system, which isn't necessarily IoT, but it's still structured data. That's the proof in the pudding. And so if you're looking at, where people are physically at, or what they're claiming to be doing, or any number of things, it creates this indelible like footprint. You've got a digital footprint of like where you're talking, but what you're doing is the smart stuff. And so you don't see it as much used yet in civil cases, but that's shifting. I mean, there were entire hotel chains that had smart home devices that were capturing information. There have been murder cases and I think civil cases around what an Alexa caught. And so it's something to keep an eye on. But even that, like, take a look back at what I said about GAI. What are you looking for? What question are you looking to answer? It's not just because someone wore a Fitbit and had a Nest and an Alexa home doesn't mean it's relevant unless you know some sort of behavior that you might want to catch is on it. And so I would say it's not something that you're going to have on every case, but it can be very relevant. And it's a pain in the ass to deal with.
I think it's going to be, I just think it's going to be interesting to overlay that in cases where you've been, what you were doing, like you said, turning up the thermostat, like, because even walking around my house, it's like I'm just telling Alexa what to do all day long. And I'm like, everyone could figure out what I'm doing in my house all day.
Well, I mean, there were claims of self-defense where your heart rate didn't go up. And so they know that someone was lying. There have been murder. My favorite murder, right, is there was someone who murdered someone in a hot tub at 3 a.m., drained it and refilled it. And they had a smart hot water pump, right? And it tracked that at 3 a.m., however many hundreds of gallons, or I don't know, math, right? However many lots and lots of water was put in. So they knew that at that window of time, the hot tub had been drained and refilled, right? And so that was indicative of I need to dig deeper. I've done I'll send you a couple of the YouTube links. I've done a couple like little cheeky videos on just my favorite cases that are using smart stuff. So they are, the Roomba one makes me giggle, but yeah.
Right. I love we talk about Roomba, I think, in every single episode. They should be paying us, I think.
Well, they're my nemesis because I own multiple dogs and I've had 2 of them killed, one by dog hair, one by a rogue, not hair, but a poo that got dragged all over my house.
Yes, we won't go into it, but I've had.
Which is why you need a human in the loop. A human would not have dragged the poop all over my house.
A human would have stopped that insanity for sure.
I did see a question about from Peter. Hey, Peter, about training. How do you stay up to speed? So not everyone has time for a certification. They're not fully keeping up to speed. What I've told people is pay attention to legal tech news. Stephanie Wilkins, is doing an amazing job. There's actually one main thread that has every new article they're putting on generative AI on it. Amazing. Come to stuff like this. There's a lot of webinars out there where people are talking, and then find a dork. I volunteer. I'm sure Shale does too. I can't even keep on top of everything. I've got a whole group of other dorks where we're emailing each other articles and stuff, but we can point you in the right direction. The starting point is to get comfortable with the key terms of art, like prompt engineering and GAI, and kind of know some of those buzz things. But don't try to go it alone. It's moving too fast. Like, I love this stuff and I feel behind. And I'm sure, Cheryl, you're hearing the same thing from everyone. There's too much to consume. So the starting point is, find your dorks, come to great podcasts and webinars, pay attention to legal tech news. Ever since Stephanie Wilkins got on, they are doing really great. Her and Isha Marath are doing a really great job keeping up to speed on that. And there's one main thread. Just type in generative AI, it should be the first thing that comes up. But every new article on generative AI, they're putting into that like live thread or whatever they're calling it. But that's what I would start with, and then keep a lookout. There probably are some videos and unpaid courses that you could do. So maybe not a full certification. Right now, we're all starting at the same point, so you're not behind, but that could change in the matter of months. And so, ask the questions, talk with people, and start poking around now.
Yeah, that's how I jumped in whatever it was November when all this came out. I was like, holy cow, what? I didn't realize we were going to actually do this generative AI stuff so fast. So, okay. So I found an engineer who actually was happy to sit down and like weave a tale for me. And I'm like, explain to me. Oh, no, more. Okay, let me get a dry erase board at it. So he walked me through the whole thing, and that's been very foundational. So those types of things are great. On the Legal Tech Consultants YouTube channel, the first episode in the series, we had Dr. Megan Enzelk and Christina D'Souza Fernandez. Both kind of walked through the foundations, and they hit on kind of all the key terms in a very, and we tied it all back to legal. So I encourage you to go check that out. Excellent. What else did I have queued up here? So let's talk a little bit about if you were kind of taking advantage of the fact that you've been on both sides of the market, right? The buy and the sell side. What advice do you have as you're thinking, if you were on the buy side again, if you were back on the law firm side, if you're trying to figure out which tools should I be using, which tools should I be buying, where should I be concerned about risk? How would you even approach that right now?
So my recommendation is a couplefold. One, have some sort of AI policy, even if you don't know how to aim it yet. Two, I would revisit your outside counsel guidelines and have specific questions you're asking, like, how are you leveraging GAI? Which tools and technologies are for corporate? So you're asking your outside counsel guideline, right? Which tools and technology are you using? What technology is it based off of? When you're vetting new technology, I would have an AI committee. I would have some folks that are tech fluent, that are on there. That might be a more junior associate that can start doing, in the same way we do a security assessment for cyber, we should be doing AI risk assessments, right? So understanding, if and how confidential information is being used, what's the underlying foundation of the technology, what models are being used. Even I would go back to your legacy tech providers and ask them if and how they're using GAI. With Lexis and I think Reuters both baking in generative AI, and I think iManage and for sure Microsoft, you might not even add a new tool, but suddenly all this GAI functionality is added in. And so like start with asking the questions. And then when it comes to what tools and tech should I be using, talk with the vendors, like we're all your partners, right? And get an understanding of what they are building and why, what the end use they're looking to solve is. And from a risk standpoint, like the things I would worry about are privileged and confidential information being used in a manner to train the algorithm that could somehow, vitiate priv or could expose confidential information. What is being retained on my side, so what's potentially discoverable, how they are putting guardrails up so you don't have hallucinations. So what validation process is in there, what the human workflow is, and how they're mitigating bias. I mean, if you look at the executive order, those are some of the big highlights. And then what's the audit trail? How can I validate the accuracy? What can I do? What reports and testing are you doing? If you're starting at zero and wondering what sort of policy you want to make, look at the executive order and the areas that it focused on, right? So it focused on confidential information. It focused on accuracy of information. It focused on audit trail. Is there a way to test and validate? And then protecting the consumer, and all while, of course, maintaining innovation. So look at those main guardrails. And I think that would sort of be where I would start, but don't go it alone. Maybe hire a consultant, or frankly, you should, as a law firm, you should be hiring a chief AI officer, right? Or not a chief data scientist, not someone building it, but like someone who can validate and I do the issue spotting and the risk spotting and can help you navigate this, because it's a transformative moment in how we practice law. It's not just a new widget, and you need to start building law firms to reflect that.
You said so much good stuff in there that I have to follow up on. I heard a term called for the role that you're talking about, where it's kind of like you're kind of helping think through the how might we, an AI soothsayer.
Ooh,
I saw it on, I wish I could give credit. I can't remember where I saw it. I saw it on the internet and I was like, ooh, well done. Love that. But the idea was really, it's kind of like the vision, right? Taking the vision, understanding all the workflows and all the technologies, not at their deepest point, but understanding what could be possible and kind of bringing that together and bringing the right people to the table. I thought that was interesting.
Well, and I think it's important that this isn't a chief innovation officer, because that's people, process, tech. This
Right.
really needs to be AI focused, because the tech is transformative, but the risks are different than, hey, I'm just adding a new, contract analytic tool. Like some of it can be so fundamentally different.
Yeah, and so fundamentally high risk. All right, if there's any other questions, if you would throw them in either the Q&A or chat. I got two more for you, Kat.
Go for it.
Thinking about the buying role again, if we talked a little bit about, you mentioned kind of the idea of being able to pull reports, kind of show your work, that type of thing. If a company, what I've run into several times is like, oh, well, yes, we have audit logs on our side. We just don't like make those customer facing. If you can't, like, you could call us and we'll run a report and tell you. That, to me, that's always a red flag, but I'm kind of curious to you, like, do you need to be able to pull some of those reports yourself, or how do you feel about that?
So we're so early in the architecture that I think we can start asking for that to be built, but the architecture that may exist now, it just might require one of their experts to pull it. So I don't think it's a red flag if there's not a button you can push.
Right.
As long as they are quick in their turnaround and they get it to you in 24 hours, whatever the case may be. But I do think as we are building new tech and as we go from, bootstrap startup, or this is the first time I'm doing large language model, to consumer grade, more robust and built out, self-serve, and the ability to myself, access, interact with, and audit the models is key. So we should get there. I don't think it's a red flag yet, as long as they are responsive, because sometimes these companies, especially ones that are legal tech by accident, aren't thinking about the discovery process, aren't thinking about QC. And so it may not be nefarious if it wasn't built out day one. It may be nefarious, who knows? But we demand as it gets more robust and that we start saying is necessary, especially if the executive order, that was the first tranche, was being able to like audit, validate, and it didn't necessarily say self-serve, but the government's not necessarily going to want to go through 18 layers and wait 3 weeks. So I think we're going to get to a point where that's the default.
Yeah, I think that's right. So, and that's my last question. I was going to close on, like, let's talk regulations and executive order and kind of what you think there. Can you share some insights with what's going on there?
So the interesting thing is I've heard two ends of the spectrum. One side is like, oh my God, it's an overreach. How are they going to determine bias? The sky is falling. I'm Stuart Little. Let me run around in circles and cry. But here's the other thing. The threshold is 10 to the 26 power flops, right? So that is a computational leap that's going to take potentially decades, right? We are nowhere near that. And so literally the EO doesn't apply to any technology on the market or technology based on the current capabilities that are out there today. Now, this is a little bit deeper than my tech understanding, but like net, it's all forward-looking. It's all aspirational. A lot of the validation they want from NIST isn't built yet. A lot of the, different protections that they want people to be building them in as we go forward. But it's going to take we're not talking about a 1 to 3 year improvement in computational power. We're talking about a massive 1 followed by 26 zeros flops, which I would tell you what a flop is and I forgot, but it's a, I don't know, iteration, whatever the case may be. But it's from a computational standpoint, it's not going from 1 to 3, it's going from 1 to 1 followed by 26 zeros. So it's a pretty exponential leap. So from a high level picture, it's just indicating where the focus is going to be. We don't want to stymie innovation, but we want to protect consumers, protect healthcare, mitigate bias, mitigate employment impact, protect privacy, and have an audit trail, right? And so as we're building new stuff, that's all going to be moving in. Tying it to what I think Defense Procurement Act, or whatever the case may be, that does imply it's not going to be voluntary, it's not going to be opt-in, it's going to be do it or else, which does mean there's some teeth. And so there's teeth, but nothing to bite into yet, is the way I would look at it. But it's a good guidance for as new entrants and even legacy entrants come on the market and try to build technology leveraging really powerful AI. So we'll see. I mean, it's a lot of hoopla for something that doesn't apply to anything yet, but it's a good indicator of where federal regulation may come out on privacy and on the use of AI. And I think there's a nice window of time where soft law made by different groups, like the MIT group Sean is part of, and different bar associations can help bridge that gap, and probably we'll have some state level regulation. We should also look at what the UK AI Summit has happened, I think this week or next.
Right. I was reading about that last night, and I'm like, that's going to be some interesting breaking news. Surely we'll have a session on that alone, probably.
100%. 100%.
So
you're remembering what a flop. I'll be able to articulate a flop by the time I come back here.
I probably still won't. So as we close out, it's the top of the hour. Kat, was there anything that we did not get to that you wanted to make sure we covered, or any closing thoughts for our great attendees today?
Honestly, just don't go it alone. Feel free. If you ever have a question, ask me. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I write a lot about it. If there's topics you want me to write about, like just to create a dialogue with different folks like me and Cassie and Jerry and Shauna, it's going to be a very dynamic time. And we all need to kind of lean in on each other so that we can stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Well, thank you, Kat, again for being there. And thanks for all who attended. We will, of course, have this on YouTube eventually when I get it up next week. Next session is next Wednesday, and that will be on recruiting for AIs. Where are we going to get these folks, right? We getting them from Google? Probably not, because we move too slow and legal. So come back and check us out with that. We get some great guests for that. Kat, thank you again. Thanks to everybody who joined us today. Thanks all.